welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, welcome to Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. This is your host, Jessica. I am really excited to be chatting with the author L.J. Andrews about Broken Souls and Bones, which is a new series, right?
Yes.
Yes, and it was a really quick read, and it is gorgeous. So, yeah, welcome to Turn the Page. And
Thanks for having me.
oh, you're so welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about this book.
Well, I have always been drawn to Norse myths and things like that. My family's Scandinavian, so I kind of grew up with those types of tales. And so a lot of my books and my backlist, they all have like a Norse mythology theme to it. And Broken Souls and Bones is probably the deepest dive into that I've written. It's kind of based on an idea of like berserker warriors and how could I make a magic system that created like basically undefeatable warriors. And so that's kind of where the world started to build from there.
So it is told in two different perspectives. You have Lyra and you have Roark. Is that how you
Yes.
pronounce it? I'm reading it and I'm just like, it's Roark, right? It's
Yeah.
Roark.
Yeah.
And she has her own magical background, and this makes her very sought after. So I wanted to just ask you a little bit about how you sort of wove the magic system into this particular world and where you got the idea for the melder from and just I guess when you're reading it you can see the Norse mythology and you can see the gods and you can see that stuff very clearly, but one of the things that's really good about reading a book and a fantasy that has sort of an older sandbox is you can really play in it and make it your own. So how did that work for you? How did you go from the Norse mythology to the world that you have here?
Well, again, it kind of stemmed from that idea, and I really wanted to build a magic system that was really kind of hands-on and maybe a little bit more chaotic, and also a visual magic system. So Lyra has this melding power, which can meld dead bone to living bone, and that doesn't seem all that impressive, but in this world, there's a way to mark these bones that you can take power from the dead. So it's kind of coveted because it kind of creates some chaos and some power that the kings and stuff want. So it built from there, like it really built from her power the whole world. And from what I've learned of Norse culture and things like that, in like the Viking Age and all that, I wanted to create a setting that felt like this is a magic system for this setting, if that makes any sense, you know? And so I wanted it to be a very visual because they were very spiritual in, you know, and they believe in the Norns and the in fate and the gods and all that stuff. So I wanted to create a magic system that kind of transported readers into their beliefs and like maybe another world that they believed was always there with them. So that's kind of how it started shaping up to be a little different, a little bit gruesome, and a little bit hands-on. So,
No, I liked it, and I like the way that just the different types of magic are described. But I did think, I think one of the things that I love, and I guess you can call it a trope, is just this idea that there are certain powers that are different and sought after, but they come with a price.
yes.
And that's sort of where we begin. When we first meet Lyra, she's not really out there as a melder. You don't want to be out there as a melder because, not only are you sought after, but when you use your power, there is a price to it. And you also meet Roark, who, first of all, is I really liked how you kind of drew him. He's silent, he communicates through writing and also just signs.
Yeah, sign language.
Um, which was very very I haven't seen that really in a fantasy book before, and especially done so well. And they're both sort of feeling each other out and assessing each other from what seems to be different points of power. That Lyra
Mm.
has magic power, but not power over her own self if that power was to be discovered. And Rourke seems to have all this power and all this status, but he himself has his own background that you later it suggests otherwise, and they're on this collision course. Um, and it was really just fun to read the dynamics of that. So just kind of hopping over to him a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, I know we talked a bit about berserkers and just in general, but did you always know he was going to be silenced? Did you always know the twists in both of their stories without giving any spoilers away?
Um, so originally, my original plan was that Rourke would not be completely silent, that he would have more of a speech impediment. And then as soon as I started writing, that was just the idea, like my brief outline. And as soon as I started writing, he was like, no, write me right. And so he just said, he told me that he was non-speaking and used sign language. And I can't imagine him any other way, to be honest with you. So his character is very layered for sure.
No, I love it. And I love when characters do that, right? When they're just like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, we're not doing this. We're doing,
Yeah, he's like,
we're
do
doing
it
this my way.
correctly. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think it's very difficult sometimes to really stand out when certain tropes are used a lot, and I think that you do that very, very well.
Good.
Um, you know, I guess like another question, and I think you kind of just answered it when you were just talking about this, is do you know all the twists before they happen? And did all of the characters like Thane and Cal, did they all exist when you started to write this story itself?
Yeah, so there is one twist in the book that just came as I was writing it. And I was like, okay, I guess this is the direction we're going. And so I said there's like a really small twist at the very end, and then there's the twist that I think most people can pick up on the foreshadowing, and then there's the twist that I didn't know was coming. Um, but then yeah, the other characters, they were all there. They were all different though. Thane especially, and I don't think this is a spoiler because it didn't turn out this way, but he originally was going to be like a villain type character. And then I started writing him, and I was like, no, he's just the bestie that everyone wants. And he's so fun. He's one of my favorite characters. And yeah, so that changed a little bit. So they were all there, just sometimes they were in different areas in my brain at first, and then they shifted again, just like Rourke, where they're like, no, write me correctly, or we're not doing this. So
Did you have a favorite one to write? Like, was there anybody who just kind of walked on the page and sort of took your hand and just made you really write them into the scene more than you
Bane.
thought there would be?
He was
Babe.
like,
Yeah, I can
I'm going to
see
be the
that.
star of the show.
I really
I always
liked
seem to have one of those characters that are just like super arrogant. There's like, I'm here and I'm here to be your comic relief and everything. So yeah, Thane was definitely one of those. Also Emmy in a subtle way. So she's part of it too. And she becomes a good female, I think, character that you want in your corner. And she kind of was just subtle about it, but I think she became more prominent than I had originally planned. So
It really was a very good, or is a very good ensemble cast. And I, again, not wanting to give spoilers, I'm really
No, it's hard.
curious. Yeah, right? It's really, I really want to know where everything is going. Are you planning this? How many books are you planning in this series?
So it'll be at least two. I finished book two and I've turned it into my editor. And so I left little bits of the world potentially to expand if we want to see how it goes. But at least two for Roark and Lyra's story. And it does expand, including the fan family. That's one of my favorite tropes. So I love like expanding the cast and like so you, in the next book you will definitely get deeper levels of these friendships, these families, these antagonists, and stuff like that. So it was a lot of fun.
Without a doubt. Do you write now? Because I know you have other series that
Mhm.
you're writing. Do you generally like write more than one series at the same time?
Not me. I tend to write one at a time. I don't know how to jump back and forth very well. Some people can. I've never found been able to master that. So I usually finish one book and then like right now I'm going back to write my Everseas number four. And so I'm back into like pirates and stuff like that and making the shift. So, I've never been able to master jumping back and forth.
I honestly don't understand how people can do that. Like it is such a, it is such a tough thing, as somebody who reads a lot of books at the same time. Like sometimes it's hard for me to get my head out of one world and then into another. But I mean, this is such a well layered world with well layered characters
Oh,
that
good.
I can't imagine. Yeah, I can't imagine doing this and something else at the same time.
Yeah.
It seemed
I
like your
used to
head would have
write
to live here.
contemporary romance and I would do it both aligned with my fantasy. Oh my gosh, some of the words I would use in my contemporary romances, it was like trousers and like I would use like wretched all the time because it was like, shifting to modern day and I couldn't do it. So I stopped doing. So,
How did you end up shifting to fantasy from contemporary romance? That's a good
well, I've done
question.
both. LJ was actually first. I started publishing in 2016 and never really found a footing for a while. So I took a break and then kind of did contemporary romance, like just rom-coms and things like that. And they're just so fun sometimes to write. And then I kind of came back with a different version of an old series that turned into my Broken Kingdom series, and that's where it took off. And that's where the Everseas series comes, and then Broken Souls and Bones is spurring from LJ. So yeah, it's just I took a little bit of break to find my footing and came back, and here we are.
So I guess that kind of explains how you play with some of that really nice tension and heat in
Yeah,
this story.
yeah.
Is that, I mean, do those scenes come naturally to you? Like, does the spice sort of just flow?
It is getting easier now as I've written it more. The tension's what I really try to build because that's half the fun in a fantasy romance is the build up and then when it breaks, it's the best. So with this, especially since Rourke is he's a sign language, I created it to where he has to kind of get right up in her business and like sign against her face or her hand. And I feel like that helped build their tension a little bit because they're supposed to be like, we don't like each other, but you also need to come close to me so we can communicate. And that helped a lot. But yeah, that's I try to focus on making it tension and then the spice just kind of flows naturally. For me at least. I don't know. That's how it feels.
So do we have a title for the sequel, and are we allowed to say what it is?
I am not 100% sure if I can say yet. We haven't revealed it yet, but yes, I do have a title. So we haven't revealed it officially yet. So I'm not 100% sure if I can say.
That's fine. How long does it usually take you to write your books in general?
Not long. I'm a pretty fast writer. This is my first traditional book, and so it's been different, like the distance between releases and things like that. But you're still super duper busy. I found like indie, I feel like I had to release, release, release. And I was like, oh, maybe I can slow down a bit. No, you're still really busy. So,
Yeah, it seems that
yeah, it takes me
way.
about like 2 months, 3 months to write a book. So I'm actually getting slower. I used to be a lot faster, but I'm actually getting a little slower.
That's
So,
really interesting.
yeah.
Because I mean, I talk to a lot of authors, both indie and both indie and outie, indie and traditional. But it does seem like, and this is not to say anything about traditional publishing, like once you find that footing and once things just start to escalate, a
Mhm.
lot of times it's a book a year,
Yeah.
which I mean, depending on who you talk to, is like really easy or, really, really hard. Um, in the way that readers consume, we want to have that, like, we want to know.
Yes.
We want to know right now. Like, this is not,
Yes.
we close the book and we're just like, that cannot be the ending. We need to know the next.
Yes.
Do you feel a lot of pressure, in general? Like, was that, or do you feel like you can kind of coast now that everything is set up?
Um, Again, I had misconceptions, I think, on traditional publishing because I was like, why does it take so long? I'm learning real quick, like the process, like there's so much editing, so many productions. They put ARC copies out much earlier than I did as an indie. And so I'm getting really used to all that. And so I can see it. I can see why books are released once a year, but I'm also doing two series with Berkeley and Ace. So they're doing the Everseas now too. So I will have two books coming out and then yeah, I don't I'm definitely not coasting. I thought I thought I would because again, I was releasing like 4 books a year as an indie and honestly it was too much. That was like a neck breaking pace. For me, some people can do it. I couldn't anymore. So yeah, I know people they want the answers, but I can also see why it does take. There's so many big teams on the traditional side that you have to go through, and it's awesome. I've learned a lot. I love both, though. I love both ways of publishing. I think it's all amazing. And so indie's fabulous. You can just kind of control your own release. You can do it as you please. And but then with traditional, you have all these wonderful people in the industry that you can learn from. So it's been pretty cool to do both worlds.
Thank you so much. First of all, the cover is gorgeous. I
Yeah.
also, did you have any input in it?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to remember it was a while ago when we did it. Yeah, they were right along with me. It's the first time I've been like a person face on the cover, so it was different, but it was really cool to go through that process and all that stuff. So yeah, they give you input. And they give you a lot more input than I think I even knew as an indie. You kind of hear these stories that you won't have any say, but that hasn't been my experience. So
Well, thanks so much. Super, super fun book. I really enjoyed it. I think that it's going to find a great place in, I know everyone's saying romanticy, romantic, there is the romanticy aspect. There's also a lot of political
mhm.
intrigue, which I appreciate
Yes.
very, very much, because it really just fleshes out the world a lot.
Yeah, well, it's part of world building. We have our own politics going on right now, right? So,
Yes.
it makes it feel to me more believable if there's a strong political intrigue in books and things like that. So,
Absolutely. So once again, this was Jessica from Syosset Libraries Turn the Page podcast. My guest was,
LJ Andrews.
and we are going to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.